So I mentioned earlier that a world that works for everyone is our overarching theme for the whole year. And this month, we're looking at the global vision part that's this kinship with all life. So this is going to be, I think, an interesting, fun month. The talk today is titled, Place No Limit on Principle. You should know better than to give me no limits. Because, this talk title, it's like I can say what I want, which I'm going to. I do anyway. Yes, you're right. You do. It's totally true. So in the Science of Mind textbook, which was written by Ernest Holmes, who was the great synthesizer of universal religion, and he did a huge survey, and he said, well, this is common here, it's common here. It's like, wait a second, everybody's saying the same thing. That must be something to it. So this is one of the things. One intelligence in the universe, and that this intelligence is everywhere. It's in the floor, it's in the chair you're sitting on, it's in you, it's everywhere. And it flows in unlimited supply through every individual. So you can't even stop it, I'm sorry. It's just, that's the way it is. It's your ground of being, that we are all one. We are all that divine, infinite essence and energy. That's our ground of being. That's our principle, that we all truly are one. And there's no limit except the ones that we create. We've stepped forward and we've put in limitations, and with our habitual thinking, we think this is the way it is, or we've had a past experience that if this happens, like if my boyfriend leaves me, I'm automatically going to be upset. Maybe not. Gary, don't go any. Yeah, husbands are different. Anyway, so you never know how something that that have happened is like, oh, that's really bad, but it's the best thing that could have happened to you. So you don't know, and you're facing limitations on your good all the time. So I've done this. That's the reason I know that part. How many of you were alive when everyone believed the world was flat? No. Well, maybe in a different incarnation. But the thing is like, that was the conventional wisdom, and everybody believed it. And that was a limitation. So you don't get in a sailing ship and go sailing off into the horizon because you'd fall off. It's perfectly logical. It was the truth, right? Maybe not. How many of you were here last Sunday? Okay, I'll tell you later why it's important. It's not that important, but anyway. So the other thing about limits is some of you may remember that Gary, my husband, and I walked on a portion of the Camino last September. So we did our training, we did our walking, but I thought, because there were 15-mile days in our plan, and I thought in my mind, there is no way in you-know-what that's going to happen. But I did. I walked the 15 miles in that day, and I walked the 12 plus the next day. It's like, I still have trouble believing that happened. But I did. And one of the things that happened to us on that trip was you would get up in the morning, you'd have breakfast, you'd put your boots on, you'd get your little backpack ready, all your water and stuff. You hit the trail, and you didn't know what was going to happen, except that you had blisters, your feet hurt, and it was a long way. And then if you wanted real food, you had to find an open restaurant along the way. And if your timing was bad, all the restaurants would be closed, which is what happened to us one day. We're slow. We trotted into this little town, and there were three of us, Gary and I and another friend of ours, and we found the restaurant. It was closed. So we kept walking, and then we came across this little old man. He was sitting on the side. It was like on the side of a building, like a barn, and he was just sitting there. I don't know if he was whittling or what he was doing. He was just living. in this farming community. And so we came up to him and we asked him, we go, well, is there another restaurant? Gary's actually, his Spanish wasn't so bad. He actually could communicate, except the guy didn't have any teeth, so it was hard to understand what he was saying. But anyway, he was a very sweet little old man. And we basically got the drift that there's no place else to eat, so we were out of luck. And Teresa and I started walking off, but Gary was still engaged with the man a little bit. And the little man pulled out 3 little walnut-sized nuts and handed them to Gary and asked him to take those to Santiago because the old man was too old to walk to Santiago anymore. But he wanted to reach out to Santiago. So Gary came to us and gave us each a nut. And we carried those nuts to Santiago as a symbol for the old man, for the magic, the love, the essence, the divine in Santiago. So we got to Santiago. The nut didn't weigh that much. I could put it in my pack. And we went to the cathedral, and there was no place to leave the nut. Because if everybody brought a nut or something into Santiago, do you know how much stuff would be in the cathedral? Oh my God. So I still had the nut in my pack. And it was the last night we were there. And I had to leave that nut in Santiago. Because that was like a sacred vow. So what I did was, we had changed hotels, and we were in this really nice, people were so sweet, little place. But it had like shutters. So I opened the shutters, and then there was a beautiful stone wall and an orchard. So I don't know why. I took the nut, and I chucked it into the orchard, because that's where it belonged. And it's in Santiago. But that little old man, he made it to Santiago through us. So there's no limit. You don't know what's going to happen. So he was staying in touch with Santiago. So Pierre Teilhard de Chardin says, it's our duty as men and women to proceed as though the limits of our abilities do not exist. We are collaborators in creation. So we are constantly creating. And there are no limits. You guys just think there are. I think there was. Because we're in part of a great experiment. And there's no, it's like, you know, at some level, this is not solid. I better not chuck it, though. Ike didn't even react. He's actually paying attention to something else. Okay. So the only limits that you put on your life are those buts that you use today. Yes, but. So what are your yes, buts? Yes, I can have anything I want, but, and then there come all your reasons, all your excuses, all your limitations. So now for the next week, every time you say yes, but, be aware. Because then you're naming all your limitations. You're saying, okay, this is what I believe, and that's why I can't have what I want. So that's pretty simple, except it's hard to do. It's really challenging to do. And the thinking that you have right now is creating your future. And the thinking you had in the past is what you're living right now. So there's a lag time. And you're not necessarily in control of how long it's going to take. So you're thinking, if you release a limitation now, you've done your work, you release the limitation now, it may show up in 10 minutes, what you're looking for. Or it could take 2 weeks or a year. But you need to do the healing now if you want a different experience. Because if you're happy with your experience right now, keep thinking the way you are. Because you're going to recreate that. It's going to show up again. this society that we're living in is, this is my opinion, one of instant gratification. So we think that if we do this, then we automatically get this, and we get it this way, and we get it now, and da 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 da. So our expectations are sometimes unrealistic, and sometimes it's not for your highest and best too. So if you're asking for something, but it's like, oh, that's really going to be bad for you, the universe will say, no, later, maybe. So sometimes it's like, this is not what belongs. But what I want to do today, now that I've talked for 10 minutes, is explain a way that you can expand the messages, the wisdom that you're getting from the world. And one of those ways, and I know you've probably had this experience, is knowing that you're one with the numinous. And the numinous is the divine everywhere. It's a spiritual quality. It's the knowing that God is part of you. It's like when you get God bumps. I've got God bumps right now. I just got them. Because I know that the divine presence is here in me. I can sense it. So it could be when you're walking out in nature. It could be just when you wake up and you're just so glad to be alive. It's those moments when you have that feeling, and it's beyond words. You can't talk about it. It's that feeling, that body sense that there is only one. You are part of that essence, and it's present all the time. And so this numinousness that we can and do experience, although we don't necessarily recognize it or realize it at the time, is healing. The Jungians all believe that this contact with the universe, which is what we all are, transposes and heals within us physical, mental, all the psychological things. This knowingness that we are one with the universe. This numinous. And how do we wake up to that? How do we see it? We can see it in our dreams, in synchronicities. You guys know that I love synchronicities. That's one of my favorite things. And here's where last Sunday came in. So a lot of you were here last Sunday for Jan and Garrett and J.D. Martin and all the music, and it was great. And in her talk, Jan mentioned something. She mentioned butterflies and the magic of the transition from caterpillar to butterfly. How many of you noticed the synchronicity that happened a few minutes later when the butterfly picture went up? Gary had no idea that Jan was going to talk about butterflies. And the butterfly picture showed up. So that's a synchronicity. And those of you who are here, witnessed it. You don't know, there's not a cause, there's no linkage, but it's a coincidence that seems to have meaning. So Gary and I looked at each other and went, oh, because we knew that was going on. And so one of the things that I like to do in talks and stuff is doing a talk is a gift for me because I get to research and play and do stuff. Because of the kinship with all things, I dug out this book, Unlikely Friendships. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this book. It's great. So what happened, of course, is that I was reading it, and I read about. I've had a lot of cheetahs in my dreams, so I read about the cheetahs and the dogs. And what happens is happening is two things. One, that in zoos all over the world, different places, the cheetahs are very nervous, high-stressed animals. But they've introduced dog companions into the zoos, and the dogs bond with the cheetahs and they calm them down. And so they're just so much happier and mellower. And then the other piece of that, too, is in Africa, they have a tremendous problem with the cheetahs attacking their livestock. So what the farmers have been receiving from nonprofits are dogs that frighten away the cheetahs. So it's good for the cheetahs because they're not harmed by the farmers. And then the farmers have their cattle and their dog. So it's an unlikely pairing of the cheetah and the dog. And that's just one example. There's so many stories in there. And I just picked that one. But then here's the synchronicity. So then I went on the internet, because I'm on the internet trying to prepare for this talk. Well, what pops up? There's a story about a baby rhino and a goat. What are the chances that there would be another strange animal pairing on the internet when I'm doing this? That doesn't happen every day. So there's a little synchronicity. Something's going on. Oh, well, then I need to mention that in my talk. I must need to say something about the orphaned rhino and the goats and the cheetahs and the dogs, You never know what's going to happen. And then, you have to listen to all my stories. Yesterday morning, I was looking outside our yard, and it was early, and there was a fox trotting across the bottom of our property. Some of you know what the property looks like. So there was a fox, and I thought, oh, a fox. And I don't see them very often. And usually it's dark at night, and they're running across the road. You don't see them. And so then I looked down at my little notepad on my kitchen table, and there was a notepad, but it had a little fox on it, which I hadn't seen before. And then I went and I opened a book, and there was fox in it. And then this morning in the shower, I thought, oh, Jill and John Fox are going to be there today. So it's like foxes everywhere. So I'm going, what's up with that? And so I was paying attention. It was a synchronicity. It's like, hey, it's a God wink. Somebody, pay attention. So what I did is I went and looked up fox as a spirit animal. And so here's what it says. And this was on the medicine cards, too, if some of you may know those. Fox medicine teaches the art of oneness through its understanding of camouflage. This applies on all levels, from rocks to God. With fox medicine, you are being asked to see all types of uses for oneness. So I noticed the synchronicity, and I followed the thread. And you all can do this too, because you just need, anyway. Oh, God, I have a bunch of stories. Never mind. Okay, there's one about Carl Jung, and if you want to hear it later, come up and ask me. But this one was amazing to me. The French writer Émile Duchamp, and I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. He claims in it, he wrote his memoirs in 1805, and he was in a restaurant with a stranger, and I can't pronounce the guy's name. We'll call him Monsieur. He was with Monsieur. And Monsieur treated him to some plum pudding. And he thought, oh, this is yummy. It's really good. So he had that. And then 10 years later, the writer was in a restaurant. Emile was in a restaurant. And he decided that he wanted to have plum pudding. So he ordered it from the waiter. And the waiter said, I'm sorry, we've just served our last portion to Monsieur, who was also there eating in the restaurant and took the last plum pudding. And then, in 1832, Emile was out with friends, and he was having a gay old time, and he decided that, he decided to have plum pudding again. And he told his friends the story of the previous two occurrences. And so he's eating his plum pudding. Guess who walked in? Monsieur. So it's like, do. Something's going on. Something is truly going on. And it's in a mystery, and we don't know what it is exactly. And I actually kind of like that I don't know exactly what it is. Because I feel like I'm in touch with the universe, the infinite. And it's an affirmation to me that I'm in the flow. That's when Fox showed up, I thought, oh, this is so fun. Because it's like, it's fun. So there's a way that we can approach this and look at and pay attention to the synchronicities that are in our lives. And it's a way to push back the limits of what we think is going on, because there is more going on than we have a clue about. So the first one, you can look at it as an oath. Be open to the experiences. Because last week, and Sunday, the butterfly was there. So that experience was there. But then be available. Pay attention. Be present. Be present. And, if something leads you off in another way, go there. Honor that. And to be thankful about the whole thing. It's like, the universe is talking to me. It's like, what's going on here? Pay attention, because you're pushing the boundaries of what we think is real, of what we think is possible. So I have a couple suggestions on how we can court this synchronicity, to court the divine guidance. How many of us have heard people in a spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer, say, and divine guidance? Well, divine guidance is great. I love it. But I need to speak the language. Sometimes the language is a little bit different. And I need to watch my expectations. I'm talking about paying attention to the synchronicities. They're all over the place. But if you're trying to force it, it doesn't work. It's being open and receptive and accepting. So the first thing is actually your spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer that we practice here, and that you can do with Cher after the service if you want. Because you can treat and pray to remove all the obstacles, all the barriers, all your old patterns of thought that may be in your way of seeing the numinous, experiencing that oneness with spirit inside yourself. And you can open your mind to your unlimited good, because there is no limit. And there's guidance out there. It's that divine intuition. And meditation in the stillness and the quiet. Dave was talking about the meditations meeting tomorrow at Genevieve's. That's a perfect place, perfect time, excuse me, to open up. You don't know what's going to come in your meditation. And some of you pay attention to your dreams at night. You could be dreaming at night, daydreams, active imagination. That's all the messages are coming in from your subconscious and from the universe. So paying attention to those. And also I mentioned the soul collage cards. This morning, I drew. Oh, what'd I do with them? I drew this one. And I draw a card every morning because it gives the universe an opportunity to guide me. And so this one, of course, I thought, it's the spiral. It's the ever-expanding spiral and getting bigger and leaving behind this chamber to go into a bigger one. So my intuition was let loose. So that's another way to do it, is to open up and give the universe as many opportunities to show up in your life as possible. You never know what's going to come. And your intuition, and you're like, you're usually taken by surprise. Like I was taken by surprise by the foxes. And one other way, there are more, is something that I've recently heard is called bibliomancy. Bibliomancy. And that is taking a book, and it could be a book that falls on your foot. It could be a book that's been sitting around. Why is that book there still? And asking a question. So what do I need to know today? Okay, now I have to get my glasses. Excuse me. The holy relationship. One truth that I've recognized during the years of my own growth, is that it is impossible to know my perfection if I am unable to see and honor the same perfection in others. The ability to see yourself as a temporary expression of intention and to see yourself in all of humanity is a characteristic of the holy relationship. It is the ability to celebrate and honor in all others the place where we are all one. God bumps. You have tons of books at home. I know you do. You could use Rumi. This is one of my favorites, The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer. And because this talks about letting go of your limits, which is one reason it showed up today. And A New Design for Living by Ernest Holmes and Willis Kinnear. You know, it's like, you can open up. There are things to do to expand your limits. Go beyond what you think is rational and works. Don't, I shouldn't be telling you what to do. Ask Gary, he knows all about that. But the thing is like the holy relationship. I know you guys can do all this. I know you can see a deer. I know you can see a fox. I know you can, it's like, oh my God, it just, the synchronicities, the happenstances, the knowing the Spirit is in you, in your life, and you're alive to it, then you don't know what's going to happen. So the mind of man is some part of the mind of God. And therefore, it contains within itself unlimited possibility of expansion and self-expression. I'm going to read that again. It's in the Science of Mind textbook. The mind of man is some part of the mind of God. Therefore, it contains within itself unlimited possibility of expansion and self-expression. And that's the truth of every one of you. So let's do the affirmation together. I'll say it and then we can say it together 3 times. I am open and receptive to my unlimited good. I am open and receptive to my unlimited good. I am open and receptive to my unlimited good. I am open and receptive to my unlimited good. And so it is. Namaste.